Well, yeah, Kitty didn't know about when he went.
Yeah.
Found out about it.
Yeah.
Kids should have, with this guardian scholarship, like we had kids who got timed out of foster homes, didn't have anything, and so we raised money and paid their tuition.
Stopped smoking with the same hypnotist. December 11 of '86, I stopped smoking.
Chad, I was when I was younger, I chewed tobacco. Negotiate like pros.
Yeah. That's one of them. There are several of them.
But recently,
That's the international.
So I look at the audience and I see.
Hey, Dave, you on?
It's kind of like a substitute. I don't think there's no tobacco.
We have
but
nothing.
there is
I'm
nicotine.
Claudia.
Claudia, nice to meet you. I'm Greg.
Nice to meet
And
you.
I think I know
in
my mind that.
And I know you,
that.
okay. And both you guys I know, and I know the young lady over here as well, I think last year.
Primarily in the smoke in the line.
Yeah.
That's a big issue. I'm probably wrong.
I don't know those two
But
guys.
I convinced myself.
I did not know that.
You're better off not admitting that you know.
Yeah.
Not sure
I actually, to me, mine was over.
With my
And I
assessment.
had this routine physicals, I checked my brains. So
Get the crowd in here because the day gets started, right?
he said, oh, you used to smoke.
Sit down,
I said, well, how'd you know that?
So you are in for a treat here. This guy is something else. He is deeply involved in the other bar, which you've all heard about.
Oh,
He has a whole interesting historical perspective on that. Greg Dorst is his name. We are so grateful to have him here. So Greg, why don't you just take off and we'll be listening to you.
All right. Yep, hey. So, I was just sort of introducing myself to people that I recall and those that I haven't met before, and I love to meet new people, so please don't remain a stranger. The legal community out here is kind of small. I like that. Most of the time they come to see you, John, for this, monumental effort here because people wait till the last minute to get their continuing education, all that kind of stuff. And this happens to be a mandatory continuing legal education section. So, and I just happen to have the right qualifications for that. I'm a former lawyer. I practiced law for quite some time as a district attorney, deputy district attorney. I went into private practice. I was lured away for greater rewards, became a named partner in a firm, hated every minute of it. Just could not handle that. I mean, the billing nearly killed me. It really did. Back then it wasn't a tenth of an hour. It was quarter hours, and so it was a little easier, but I don't know how they do it. So I decided to open up my own practice, and I did that. I became a criminal defense lawyer, opened up my own practice. I kind of had a side practice in the civil firm for criminal defense, and so it was pretty easy for me to, hang my own shingle. So I did that, and that's going to be part of the story that I tell when I name myself as Exhibit A, for some of the things that can happen when you get too involved in things that you shouldn't get involved in, and you don't stop when you should. But I'll get into all that. But needless to say, I have the legal experience. I have the trial experience. I know what it's like to be a lawyer. I know the stress. I know the anxiety. I know the disappointment. I know the highs, the lows. It can be a generator of extreme joy, and you're filled with adrenaline. The dopamine's rushing through your pleasure pathway, and you go, "Wow, I'm the greatest." You can have that, and then you can have those times when you go, "What the hell did I do to myself? What did I do to my family? What did I do to my life?" I mean, it's this. It's not the things that I want to do. It's this. And you start looking at the world differently when that happens. I understand all of that because, I went through it. I also am an addiction specialist, which is kind of a catch-all for the things that we overdo. So it's not just alcohol and drugs. Today I write articles for places like the California Lawyers Association on different types of addictive disorders. And if you went to the CLA's website and went to the Wellness Committee section, I'm a founding member of the Wellness Committee for the California Lawyers Association. You would find articles, and I've got about 12 of them up there. And they're about what happened to us during COVID. You know, it's kind of an interesting read. They're about, of course, substance use disorders and the solution as well as how the problem occurs. They're about gambling, and they're about addiction to social media and electronic devices and sex addiction and all the other types of things, including grief, which, believe it or not, we tend to feel a lot around things. Maybe even a case that you worked on for 5 years, and now all of a sudden you got a big bill because you lost. There's grief in all of that. It was really directed toward COVID and how to understand what was really going on in the world back then, and people couldn't understand why it was that they were feeling depressed and couldn't do anything but, just crawl inside themselves. And they didn't understand this concept of grief. When you lose the life that you had, even just for a short period of time, it's a grieving session. So you'll see all those articles if you go on the California Lawyers Association. So I know a lot about things that are ancillary to the substance use disorder addictions, because most of them are pretty much the same sort of thing. Now it's interesting, the people that I work with who are suffering from some of these issues, whether it be gambling or substance use disorder, drugs, prescription drugs or alcohol, or even porn, they just want one thing. They want not to want it anymore. That's all. That sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? They just want not to want it. And so they're always looking for something that will help them to do that really, really easily. They just want not to want it. But here's the thing with lawyers, because I work specifically with lawyers, judges, and law students. Lawyers, incredibly bright, resourceful, they believe they can fix themselves, because wanting not to want it seems to be a choice, doesn't it? I'm smart enough. Who's going to stop me from doing, what I really want to do, which is to not do this? Who's going to stop me from doing that? Nobody. I can do that. And so it's oftentimes harder to get lawyers to jump into a recovery process that really makes sense, to actually fully recover rather than just give it up for a short period of time, because they think they got to hand it. I'm smart enough to get through this. I don't need some guy who's been to prison telling me how to live my life, setting forth my treatment plan and monitoring me and doing all those doggone things. I can do this myself. And that's common. And it's common to fail, too. It's common to fail because there's something about the recovery process that kind of requires you to let go, and just start taking direction for the first time. The lawyers don't do that very, very well. So, yeah, I have a lot of experience in addictions, and one of those experience pieces is my own. It. I've got 28 years of sobriety, 28 years being clean, so that it was a road, let me tell you. It was a tough road. Lots of things that when you hear it, and this is going to be later on, you're going to say things like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you went through that. Why wouldn't you stop before that happened? And what kind of craziness, in your own mind led you to do that kind of stuff?" But when you're using drugs and using alcohol and you're doing it all the time, you sort of lose sight of what's appropriate, what's not. Your defenses are dropped. You start doing things that you wouldn't ordinarily do. And that can be seen very, very easily by you guys. And I'm sure you have experience with people in your life that may have had issues with alcohol, drugs, or maybe other addictive issues, they lie. They lie, right? Have you ever had that happen, where you've been lied to by somebody who's under the influence of something? Yeah, I'm sure you have. You got it. Most everybody today knows somebody that has or had an alcohol or drug addiction. I would imagine, without you having to raise your hand, or you up there on the Zoom not having to raise your hand, the answer to that is yes. Yeah. And you've been exposed to that to some degree. You've been exposed to the promises that have been made, I'll never do it again. You've been exposed to the, I'm so sorry for what I did. And you've been exposed to the pleading to be forgiven, and then have it 2 days later happen again. You know, have it just repeat itself again and again and again and again. And the thing about it is that they weren't necessarily lying at the time, although their experience probably told them that they weren't going to be able to make it as long as they were promising to. But they nevertheless weren't lying about quitting. They really wanted to. They just couldn't stay stopped. And that's a hallmark of being an addict or an alcoholic. You can't stay stopped once you make that decision to stop. And I'll explain how that works too. So as a result of this business of being a former lawyer, being a current addiction specialist, having my own recovery, which I was enamored with, I stepped into a new profession which essentially allowed me to use those tools, those experiences to my advantage and to the advantage of other people that I work with this group called The Other Bar. Now, The Other Bar is not in any way, shape, or form aligned with the State Bar. The Other Bar is a private nonprofit that has as its mission to help lawyers, judges, and law students to move through addictive issues, to provide a community of support to make sure that recovery happens and is maintained. Now, you know that I use two words independently. Recovery happens and is maintained. The maintenance thing is sometimes difficult. You know, people will go to treatment. Let's say they go to the Betty Ford Center. You know, I do a group out at the Betty Ford Center every Tuesday. And I see people, lawyers, I do them for lawyers. I see people go in, lawyers go in, and they are gung-ho. They are ready to roll. They want to get through this thing, and they want to get back to their practice. Yet that practice has been swirling around in their mind the entire time. Whether that has an effect on their ability to concentrate during the let's say 30-day treatment episode is another question. But they appear to be listening. They appear to want it, and they appear to, at least for the time being, have it. They appear to have found something, some joy in remaining clean and sober, moving into that without the difficulty that they thought might arise. And when it comes time for them to leave, they're confident, very confident. And they go home and they talk to their family and they talk to maybe some people in their firm or whomever, and everybody pats them on the back and says, "Thank God you got rid of that. Thank God you took care of it. Thank God you moved through it and you're fine now." You know, oh joy, the world has changed for you. And they expect that, it's done. You know, that treatment at the Betty Ford Center cured them. And they're surprised to find that it's just the beginning. You know, there are a ton of things that you have to do in order to maintain that. You can't just walk out into the wide old world that's going to cause all the same stressors that they had been dealing with in the past, all the same highs and lows, all the same difficulties, and expect it to have taken hold in 30 days. You know, everything that needs to be done in 30 days. Nope. So I see them come back, 45 days later, second time there, They'll come back and they'll do more of a refresher, and, they get 20 days in. And some of the people, 6 months later, they're back again. 3, 4, 5 times sometimes. And I'm talking about lawyers. I'm talking about smart people. I'm talking about you guys. You know, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. You go, what the heck is going on here?
Boosters.
Yeah, what's that? Yeah. So it happens. So the maintenance of it is really, really important. And we'll talk about why that is and all of that kind of thing. But the interesting thing about this journey through recovery is that when you start off just wanting not to want, whatever it is that's causing, you think is causing the issue, as you stay sober and clean over a longer period of time, you find other reasons to stay sober. You find other reasons to want to not use again or drink again that you didn't think were going to be there in the first place. I mean, if you came into recovery thinking that you just wanted to stop wanting, after a while, maybe a couple of years, you'll find out that you're a better lawyer because you don't use anymore. Isn't that wild? And you go, whoa, there's a good reason. There's a good reason to keep doing the things that I'm doing that allow me to stay clean and sober. They'll find that their relationship with their family has just grown immensely. You know, they're welcomed back by most of the people in the family, and those relationships mean more to them as a sober person than they did when they were trying to get away from them by drinking and using. And so all the other reasons that, you know, life gives us to want to be clean and sober start to show up. It's not just anymore wanting not to want, it's wanting to engage in life at a deep level. And so people who are in recovery have found a lot of things that they would not otherwise have found had they not gone through this process. So, yeah, this is a really interesting journey, you guys. What I like you to do, typically, is, you know, take a look at what you might do that's problematic. Most everybody has one or two things that they really don't want to do anymore. You know, whether it's overeat or sugar, or maybe they do some, you know, things that they keep secret from everybody else. Maybe you're in that category. But usually, you have it. And so you can start to relate a little bit more. You know, people who have found themselves in trouble with the state bar, 70% of the time, there's a drug, alcohol, or mental health issue that brings them to that point. 70% of the time. That's a big number. That's a high number. And you know, 19% of those really is where the mental health issues cut off, and the rest, 51%. There is, generally speaking, alcohol and drugs. I mean, it's a big deal for lawyers. And so we wonder why. So we do studies on that kind of thing. So I'm going to get into that too in just a moment. But before I get into that, I want to give you guys a little overview of what it is we're going to be talking about. Because this is a 3-hour session. That's a joke, by the way. I can't believe I didn't get you guys going, what? 3 hours? I got to stay in here 3 hours? What? Thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. So no, we're going to get through this, and it's an hour long, you guys. I mean, it's really going to be fun. You're going to enjoy it. At the end, you're going to go, man, you said I'd enjoy it, and I did. I really enjoyed this. Yeah, so I'll set the tone for you there.
I want you to know, Greg, you got 2 hours and 15 minutes on the calendar.
Thank you very much. John usually says, just finish by Monday. That's what John usually says, just finish by Monday. So.
Just finish by Monday.
So we're going to do reaching out when times get tough, and it's going to be loaded with fun stuff. We're going to be talking about the problem and self-knowledge and desire to change and how that comes about, solutions, and then there are resources available that are in your packet. You guys got a full packet of this. I think you have your own PowerPoint.
Yes.
Yeah, so what you can do is you can go home, you can sit your family on the couch, and you can give this to them. See, yeah, you can do that whole thing for them. So, yeah. All right, so this is a big deal, and I need you to know this, because it is one of the reasons why when I'm finally called to help to bring somebody back to their senses, to create a situation help create a situation for them, for their life to get better, a lawyer's life or a judge's life or a law student's life to get better, it's usually already in the toilet. It's usually a low bottom, meaning they've already suffered a lot of damage. It might be that a lawyer has gone through a divorce, lost their family, financially bankrupt, lost their license to practice law, has serious liver disease or some other very serious physical difficulty, has found themselves homeless even, really low stuff, low bottom stuff, maybe committed a crime that is going to put them in jail or prison as well, and there's great angst about that. So, low bottom, why? Why did they wait so long? Well, there's a stigma, especially amongst lawyers and people that are served by lawyers, that you are dangerous if you're using drugs or alcohol addictively, that you probably are not going to do as good a job as somebody who doesn't use it at all. And knowing that, and knowing that we make our living on our reputation, you try and hide this. I mean, you hide it from everybody. You're going to hide it from the people that you work with until it can't be hidden anymore. Until it can't be hidden anymore. But if somebody asks a lawyer in your office, wherever you might work, do you drink excessively? They would look at you like, get the hell out of my life. You know, I'm not going to answer that kind of question. I mean, this is a little bit intrusive, you know. I mean, the signs and symptoms are there. You know, they've got, you know, the red corpuscles, you know, bursting in their face. They've gained a lot of weight. There's a lot of difficulty with making deadlines. They're just, you know, isolating and, you know, late to court all the time. It's just, it's serious. Something's happening. And you ask them point blank, you know, and you smell the alcohol too. Are you drinking too much? And they'll look at you like, man, you just found a way to get swept out of my life. Because, you know, not only is it none of your business, but the answer to that is absolutely no. Not. No way. Are you using cocaine? Oh my God, talk about getting a incredibly firm no on that one, which would be a lie, you know, if the person is using cocaine. Or methamphetamine, or opioids? No, absolutely not. And doggone it, even though most of the time they absolutely will be honest with you, and they'll try and be honest with the court and with clients and all that kind of stuff, but they will lie to your face about this issue. Because they know it's gonna affect their profession and how they get paid, or whether or not they get paid, how people perceive them, whether or not their reputation in the community is gonna be squat or really good. So they hide it. They hide it because of all those things I was talking about, and that's called stigma. There is stigma. Yeah, it's particularly difficult with judges. I have had to do interventions on judges, the family interventions on judges, and it is rough because judges absolutely do not want anybody to know that they have a problem, because it carries over into this category of judgment for them, you know. Their ability to have good judgment and perceive equity in every situation is at stake for them. So they're not going to admit a thing. So because of that, it's actually very, very hard, very difficult to have somebody who's even successful in recovery as a judge join a group like the other bar, which is for lawyers, judges, and law students, because they don't want to have anybody, not even people who have recovered from this seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, know that they were in some way, shape, or form compromised at some time. So it's a really hard thing. It's a very hard thing for people to step up and say, that's me, I have this issue. That's me, you know, I'm suffering from severe depression. That's me, I have anxiety so bad sometimes I can't get out of bed. That's me. These things are happening. Their employer's noticing something and they don't want to come forward and say it. And you can understand why. I can understand why. The law firms now understand why, because I go to a lot of different law firms and give this presentation. Sometimes afterward, we have a session with the managing partners, and we talk about how we can make it a little more comfortable for some of the lawyers to come forward when they're suffering from things that will compromise their performance. And believe it or not, you know, they look at me square in the face and they go, I don't know. Not sure, even if we had a place where they could get right, that we'd want to keep them. Wow. I mean, isn't that just like the proof of what it is I've been talking about with respect to stigma, you know? I go, whoa. Yeah. And then the next time I'm there, actually a different law firm, but in the same building, I'm there because one of the associates committed suicide in the parking garage. You know? And then they want to know what it is that they could do to kind of catch these things early on. And I talked to them about how that's going to be impossible unless you change your attitude around whether or not it's okay for lawyers to be regular people and suffer from these issues, you know. And can they be human as well as, you know, legal eagles? Yeah, it's tough. It's really tough. So all of this stuff are factors. The stigma is big. It keeps lawyers from coming forward. And one of the reasons why I am often answering this phone rings because the number that's, the other bar number rings directly to me, and the other bar is often known as that organization, at least when I'm finished talking to a group, they know. That organization that doesn't judge you, that organization that's not connected to the state bar, that organization that is confidential in nature and helps you to move into a new space, a different place where you can actually start doing the things you want to do. You can stop wanting the thing that you don't want. And you can maintain that by being in a group of people that support one another and they help each other to pull on the same end of the rope. There's something healing about being connected in a group of people that are doing the same thing. Something easier as well about getting sober when you realize that there are a bunch of lawyers that were just like you, you know, that have moved into this place where their lives are better, much better. And all you got to do is put your finger in the belt loop of these people that know and just let them help you and guide you. So the other bar is incredibly instrumental in helping people get through it. When people go to the Benny Ford Center and they get their 30 days done, boy, I am right there giving them every bit of information about the other bar so that they can connect in with the other bar. Even if they're from different states, they can come in and do our meetings with us via Zoom. You can Zoom in just like these guys are doing here. And get connected with people, get to know people so that they don't go out and relapse again. So this thing about relapse, you think, wow, I'm glad that's not me. I'm really glad I'm not in that situation. I'm glad I'm not, you know, an addict or an alcoholic and even had to go through any of this kind of thing. You know, too bad for them. But this issue of whether or not lawyers can actually make it in recovery affects every lawyer. It affects all lawyers, whether you've ever had a drink or not. I mean, it affects whether or not the public's going to trust you. It affects whether or not the public sees you as something other than, you know, competent. There's just a slight effect on the fringes, you know. I mean, you might be one that has an issue. I mean, you didn't return my call, you know. I left you 5 messages. It happens all the time. People call me all the time and say, you know, I think my lawyer's drunk or on drugs because I wrote him a letter. I made 10 calls to his office. I did this, I did that. I even went down there and the door was closed and on and on and on and on. And it may be that they're just too busy or maybe they're even on vacation and they, you know, for a long period of time or whatever and haven't had an opportunity to get back to them. But then again, it may not be, you know. So I get calls from all sorts of people, not just the lawyer that's in trouble, but from some of the people that have something to do with their lives, their bosses, their wives, their husbands, their family members, their kids, you know, because they really want to help. They can see it, even when the person can't. You know, the funny thing is, when I got sober, I thought that there weren't very many people that knew. Turns out everybody that knew me knew. And it wasn't even a close call, but I thought I was hiding it from people. I thought I was good at that, you know. But we're not good at it. You've seen it. You've seen it in courthouses. You've seen it in the law firms, you've seen it in settings, social settings where somebody drinks too much and you figure, wow, that's a problematic issue for them, obviously. And you know that it's happening. You see it, maybe you even smelled it in courtrooms. I know I did all the time. So, yeah, it's a pervasive issue. Stigma keeps people out of recovery. And so we do studies to figure out just how many people there are out there. How many people there are out there that might be suffering. We do studies on that. So I'll go right to that right now because here's the study that I'm talking about. It was done in 2016. And the reason why, and there have been studies done since then around lawyers, but not with such a large sampling. But Hazelden Betty Ford is obviously a recovery and treatment conglomerate because of the word Betty Ford. I mean, that's what she's noted for. But the Hazelden part of it is actually a data collector and a researcher and a writing arm of the recovery community. Well, they were based in Minnesota and they combined resources, which is great because Hazelden does a really good job of that data collection stuff. So they started working with the American Bar Association to determine whether or not they could do this study, this nationwide study with lawyers, to see just what these addiction and alcohol rates are for lawyers, alcohol usage rates are. So they did a study with 12,825 lawyers. That's a big sampling. That's a really, really big sampling. And they spent time with them. And they asked them a lot of questions. They had them perform tests over time and do the things that you do to determine whether or not a person, even some of the physical exams, whether or not a person has an issue. And some of the findings were dramatic. They were huge. So it turns out, based upon this study, oh, by the way, let me give you the groundwork on the study. So you'll see how these numbers are actually deflated rather than inflated. I told you that I get calls from people, or I call them, lawyers who have been suspended or who have lost their licenses. Yeah, they weren't included in the study. I get calls from lawyers who have been fired and no longer employed. That happened a lot. They weren't in the study either. So 12,825 licensed and employed lawyers were part of this study. So you can see that if the unlicensed or suspended license or unemployed lawyers were involved in this, how the numbers would probably be a little higher, right? I mean, it just stands to reason. But they weren't involved. So 12,825 lawyers, they found that approximately 21% of those lawyers drank alcoholically. Once they started, they couldn't stop. They drank too often during the week, medically speaking. And once they stopped, they couldn't stay stopped. That's sort of a hallmark. Some of them had adverse consequences around drinking alcohol as well, and that didn't get them to stop, which is really a hallmark of having a problem. It's one of the best definitions of whether or not a person is suffering from some sort of an addiction for anything. Do they continue to do that activity despite having adverse consequences around doing it?
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
So just to set the stage, I have extensive experience. My mom is a clinically diagnosed manic depressive psychotic bipolar disorder. I've been dealing with that for 40-something years. And do you believe in the concept that for some people, I don't know what percentage, the substance abuse is self-medicating the underlying mental illness?
Absolutely.
Okay. So this study you're talking about, what percentage of the substance abuse is self-medicating an underlying mental illness? Is that all the time or just some of the time?
Well, you can ask questions around whether or not people are suffering from, symptoms of anxiety or suffering from things that would give you an idea that they have heavy anxiety or depression, major depression. But those are the only two arenas they actually ask questions about. They didn't ask if people were on medication for bipolar disorder or schizoaffective or schizophrenic, So.
And then, do you also believe that for some people, because I'm reading your bio, concurrent substance abuse mental disorder, okay, so sometimes the person is abusing the substance as a form of self-medication underlying mental illness.
Yep.
do you believe that sometimes the substance abuse, let's take THC,
Mhm.
causes a subsequent mental illness?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's my daughter.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to keep my cool over here.
Yeah.
But what you're talking about
Mhm.
affects my life dramatically.
Yep.
And I'm dealing with my mother who's 88.
Yeah.
Monitoring her mental illness issues and dealing with my daughter who's 26.
Yeah.
One last question. Is this concept of me, a child of a clinically diagnosed manic depressive, possible for me to have manic tendencies and depressive tendencies, where I don't need the medication, but if you look at my behavior over a 30, 40-year period, you see here I'm manic, here I'm depressive. Have you ever heard of that?
Absolutely. In fact, it's likely.
No, that's me.
Yeah.
So it took me a while to figure out,
Yeah.
when I look at what's going on, and now one of your slides is awareness. So my wife and I monitor my behavior, and we know when I'm manic.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm getting up at 3, I'm working 4 for 20 hours straight.
Mhm.
So I channel that into my work,
Yeah.
make no risky financial decisions or buying decisions. So what you're saying is resonating with me. So
Yeah.
thank you for what you do, because people don't realize
They don't.
how many people are out there like us.
So let me just give you a little background. Did you guys find that helpful? It should be. This is incredibly helpful because we find that people who are suffering from mental health issues or concerns oftentimes self-medicate because they either haven't had access to a physician that can prescribe medications to help them through these up-down cycles or around cycles, or they don't like the medication, the effect that it has on it, they don't use it. They won't use it because it really has bad side effects.
Yep.
So they find themselves going out into the community and finding alcohol, illicit drugs, street drugs to self-medicate. Now what he's talking about is the other end of the spectrum where people start there by using drugs that they find on the streets or maybe even prescription drugs, and they start using them addictively, and it creates a psychosis within them. Methamphetamine is a great example of that. For lawyers, Adderall starts with Adderall. Sometimes in law school, you probably have some people using Adderall in your law school.
Yes.
And what that is a pharmaceutical speed, and it's really heavy-duty stuff, and it'll keep people up and appear like it helps them to do things for longer periods of time, like your manic cycle. Yeah. So it is sometimes it creates the mental health concern through the overuse of the medication because there are brain changes that occur during that period of time when a person's using addictively. So we oftentimes have to figure out whether this is a chicken or egg issue. The person's presenting and you go, how did this happen? We need to know what caused this so that we can start taking appropriate action. So now you might be able to understand why it's so important in my bio that I mention this. That I was the chief executive officer of the first and largest hospitalization program that treated under the same roof people who were suffering from addiction and people who were suffering from mental illness, no matter whether it came from the chicken side or the egg side. So we could start having therapists working in a setting where they can deal with the mental health issues and also concurrently deal with the substance use disorder issues. Because if you don't get them both, typically at the same time, you're going to lose one. You can understand that. Absolutely understand that. So that was a new concept to the federal government, the brand new concept to the federal government. And when we explained that concept to them, and then we had a 125-bed hospitalization program there that would allow this to happen, they said, we'll give you a grant. And so we were the first organization to actually, and it's in the Inland Empire here, first organization to actually get a grant to treat substance use disorders and mental health issues in this concurrent setting.
Greg, is that dual diagnosis?
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, I've heard that term, but
Yeah.
that's the first time I really get it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's quite possible you can treat the issue of addiction and you just release them to the streets, and man, that schizophrenia just is boom, immediately they're back doing the things they were doing. Or they haven't treated the bipolar disorder issues. You've got the manic cycle and craziness is going on. And then depression comes on. they got a kid again in a different way. It is a cycle that you've got to take a look at the entire system of life for people in these situations, so that your daughter and your mother can get the treatment that they need. So this is a complicated issue. It's a very complicated issue. So yeah, lawyers suffer from this, but we didn't get into this question of whether or not there was any other mental health issue besides anxiety or major depression affecting the use of alcohol or drugs. So can't answer that question
Yeah, that's fine.
for this particular study. But we do know that, interestingly enough, and you'll probably resonate with this too, that the people that said that they had suffered from major depression claim that they didn't have it before they started practicing law.
Right.
And the major depression was pretty high, 28% of those surveyed. And same thing with the anxiety. They suffer from anxiety. They didn't have it before they started practicing law. Now, I don't know whether or not that's true, but that's the claim in the question and answering of people here. Maybe they did, maybe it was minor, and then they started doing something serious,
Anecdotally,
Yeah.
yeah, I've been practicing 48 years. Over those 48 years, I'll tell you, every single time I talk to a lawyer that's been practicing at least 10 years, they all say, I gotta find a way to get out.
Yeah.
So it's a tough road.
Yeah. So imagine this. No, you don't need to imagine it, because it's probably happened to you. So you can't sleep, you got deadlines, you don't know how you're gonna get it done. It's maybe even something you've never done before. You're concerned about outcomes. It just is horrific. And this party in your head is not a party. It is a major anxiety fest, because everything about what's going on in your life is uncertain. And you want to get out of that. You just want to get out of that. Well, you could go to the yoga studio, and you could talk about all the different things that you might be able to do that would help you to get through that and relieve your anxiety, and that would be wonderful. But it takes time. It takes time, doesn't it? You have time to go to the yoga
I'm
studio?
the poster child, yeah, no.
Yeah, I know what his schedule is. He doesn't have time to go to the yoga studio. He doesn't have time to go to the Buddhist temple and learn how to meditate. You don't have time to do any of that kind of stuff that would naturally take care of the issue. So if you don't have time to do that kind of stuff, what are you going to do? You're going to go to the doctor. And the doctor will prescribe you a pill. And boy, we really like that, because it's immediate. The change is immediate. And we want to be fixed now because we have problems with time. And do you know that time is connected to money in this profession? I was just talking about that, right? Hey, here's your 1/10 of an hour billing rate. Boom, write it down, write it down again. It is ridiculous, but it also lets you know that if you go to the yoga studio and spend an hour there, you just lost $500. Cost you $500 to do that. Because time is money. Time is money. You want to take vacation, you got to write that all out, man. I'm not going to be able to do this, not going to be able to do that, because I won't have the income. What a life. Every bit of your time, whether you need to do it for yourself or not, starts costing you. You feel it in your wallet and you say, well, I don't really need to do that. So you're not going to do it. This time and money issue is going to keep you from solving the problem in a natural way. And believe me, there are holistic ways to solve the problems, or at least help you get through the problems. Some people need medication along with all this other stuff. That's the way to use medication. If you need it, do it with. It's a this and world. So, yeah, we go to the doctor. And for anxiety, the doctor gives you some benzodiazepines. You might get a prescription for Ativan. I've had lawyers come to me and go, I believe I'm going crazy. I said, well, have you been prescribed something? Yeah, I've been prescribed Ativan for my anxiety. Whoa, how long have you been taking it? About 3 years now. Your doctor is prescribing Ativan for 3 years now? This is only supposed to be taken for 2 weeks.
Wow.
You know, I mean, it's highly addictive. It will make you feel like you're crazy over this period of time. Not supposed to be done. Doctors don't know that. They still prescribe it. And that's a major treatment. That's a huge treatment. And here's the reason why. Because in most recovery and treatment centers, what they use to help people to come off of other substances is benzodiazepines. It sort of relaxes your system a little bit, then you sort of taper off the benzodiazepines over the 30-day period, and now you've got what you need. You know, the offending substance, if it was opioids, heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine, whatever it might have been, alcohol, will have left your system, as well as the benzodiazepines. Now you can start the real work. Now you can start really moving in the right direction. But if you are addicted to benzodiazepines, you don't have that methodology of withdrawal. You know, you don't have that option for medication assisted withdrawal, because you're addicted to what they would use to help you get off. So now we got lawyers who've been ill-prescribed something that they could have taken care of in the yoga studio for 3 years instead of 2 weeks. They're showing all kinds of symptomology for serious harm as a result of that, and they wonder how they can solve that problem now. And now we have a real issue, because they got to be gone from their law practice for 3, 4, 5 months. It's hard. It's difficult. So yeah, I mean, there are things that are done in our society that do not help these issues. And they're often done by people in white coats who don't know any better. And if you're a doctor, I apologize now for having besmirched you. You know, there are a lot of doctor lawyers. I don't know if you know that. Doctor lawyers are a thing. It usually happens when the doctor has been suspended from the practice of medicine for a while. They have a little extra time, you know, so they go to law school. That's what usually happens. Most of the time, it's that. But yeah, we have a lot of doctor lawyers. Anyway, so 21% alcohol use, 28% depression, 19% anxiety. Those two last numbers are claimed to have not been present when the people first started practicing law, and they somehow attained that diagnosis of major depression or in anxiety, which you might call it incredible stress, because it is. But it's around uncertainty typically. So our profession just inherently has these pitfalls, these potential problematic circumstances because of the time and the money. We're chronically short of time and money. And then sometimes we're doing things in our law practice that just kind of, you know, push up against our values, you know. I mean, it's called cognitive dissonance. So it's like the little noise in your head because what you're doing might not be good for, let's say, I'll just say, for the environment maybe, or maybe it might not be good for society, because if I get this child molester, obviously it's going to do the same thing again. You know, I mean, I'm criminal defense, and that can happen. Cognitive dissonance is happening, and that can take its toll too. So there are all kinds of things that we do that are dangerous for us. Seeking help from the doctor is typically the way people go, because they're chronically short of time. So this is the problem. Now, the question then becomes, how do we get out of it? You know, how do we get out of it?
And the doctors prescribe medication without telling you about the side effects or how long it should be taken.
Well, they should not. They shouldn't. But gosh, I hate to say this. I hate to say it. But if you got one of these, man, you can check your doctor. And surprisingly, this is a cell phone. And I have 3 different AI programs. Anybody here use AI? I have 3 different AI programs on my phone as well. And some of these AI programs are pretty darn good, but you got to check everything. You know, you have to do it. but at least it gives you some sense as to where you go to check. But it'll tell me how to fix that TV right there if I ask it. It's everything that's text in the world ends up on that program. It's the way of the future. If you're practicing law, you kind of have to know that. So, you know, the biggest conference classes, the ones that they hold in the big rooms nowadays, you know, if you go to a conference, a large conference like the Consumer Attorneys of Los Angeles, anybody belong to that? Consumer Attorneys of Los Angeles? I go there every year and I operate a wellness suite there. But if you go to the CLEs, the largest sessions are on AI. And the most that occur during those conferences are about artificial intelligence and how to use it in your practice and pitfalls and issues and all that other kind of stuff. And if you don't know that, you'll fall behind the curve and you'll have less opportunity to understand it.
I think artificial intelligence is a con. I do. It's only as good as the people that are programming it. And how do you know who's programming it? And how do you know that the information is accurate?
Yeah, well, they can do things like exclude some of this stuff. You know, there are some political programs that are much less robust in terms of accurate information. But what they are is large text gobblers, meaning they invade the internet and they take every bit of knowledge that they can glean from the internet and they synthesize it.
But doesn't that essentially take away, like I'm an old-time lawyer, 50 years.
Yeah.
Doesn't that take away from the hard work that we would do to find the right answer based upon our own reading and interpretation of whether it's...
Well, didn't Westlaw do that a long time ago?
Well, it was books, and then it went to...
I remember when you used to have to pay some to use the Westlaw
You did have to, you're right. But that was for access to books. I don't think that artificial intelligence, I just don't think it has a place in law.
Yeah.
I think young lawyers are not going to ever gain the experience of more experienced lawyers by using artificial intelligence.
You might very well be right about that. It might create flabby brains for sure. But you know what it can do too is it can sort out all of the things that usually would take hours and hours and hours and hours for people to sort out. It can fill out forms faster than, you know, your 10 paralegals if you're in family law or you're doing wills and trusts.
They say it's very useful in medicine
Yeah.
and not so useful in the legal profession.
So can I give real world examples?
Yeah,
sure. And I think I'm more in your camp. So I'm an insurance lawyer.
Mhm.
So one I'm nationally known as a Dino insurance expert, directors and officers liability insurance.
Yeah.
That large corporations buy. So I have created wordings and concepts. So someone tested and put into AI some of my concepts, and I was shocked to see the AI spit out the exact 100% correct description of a particular problem. I'm like, holy shit, that's me speaking. I'm like, yeah, because all your articles are being captured.
that's right.
Okay,
That's exactly right.
here's where I loved it. The solutions for bullshit. I'm like, what? These aren't my solutions.
Right.
These are totally inaccurate.
Yeah.
Because I don't put my solutions on the internet.
Well, see, here,
That's one example.
now you set a great boundary, and I'll tell you that's my boundary too, because what I will do is have AI produce every study that's been done in the last 10 years on this particular issue. So I get the studies and I can look at them. I don't have to take their conclusions.
There you go.
See?
So I think there's a use, like Westlaw Lexis, I use it to
Yeah.
do the research, but I have to do my own analysis. The other thing is, and I am shocked at this, general counsel, CFOs are now running entire D&O insurance programs through an AI program and spitting out recommendations and sending them to us. We want you to do this. And I'm reading the recommendations, like I've been doing this for 35 years. These recommendations are insane. They make no sense. But general counsel and CFOs are assuming, because it's an AI program, that these recommendations must be correct. That to me is where you come out.
That's exactly.
The absolute fallacy
Yeah.
of presuming that an AI program knows what the hell it's doing.
Yeah, that's what I meant by checking. That's what I meant.
Adversely impact our practice.
Yeah, right.
Now I'm spending time
Here's two
explaining to somebody.
insurance defense lawyers, you're right. you know what you said, you'll get all, the AI will produce all the research papers, but it's not, and that's great, because then you can read them and you can draw your own conclusions with your own knowledge and experience. But if it starts interpreting them for you, that's when you get into trouble.
Yeah.
It can produce them and say, here's all the articles that AI was able to find, but you've got to read them yourself and determine how to apply them to whatever it is you're trying to
Totally.
deal with.
Totally.
And I think young lawyers don't get that idea. Young lawyers will use AI for a simple way out, and they're not gonna learn by doing the hard way. It's like kids nowadays, kids don't know how to write.
Yeah,
They don't know how to handwrite, they don't know how to type.
Judges will call out these young lawyers who will file motions or file responsive pleadings just from AI. And the judges call them out from the bench, and there are young lawyers who have gotten sanctioned because they have been too lazy to double check stuff that they put on paper that turned out to be incorrect. Like he was saying, the conclusions were wrong, but they just relied on AI.
That's true. So that's
In cases too.
Yeah.
AI also, they create false
Exactly.
citations,
Yeah.
false cases.
Yeah.
And somebody's gotta take the time to research those to find, does this case ever occur? I think it's taking the easy way out, and there's nothing like hard work.
Oh,
Just
there are,
like young lawyers used to quote the dissent, and you had to figure that out. They did that all the time.
yeah,
Now there's some tough cases, I saw a couple examples, never happened,
Right.
weird names, and
Yeah.
that's too weird, and when a judge finds that, there's sanctions, you read about it every other day now.
yeah, there are AI programs now, and I'm not gonna spend any more time on this evidence, but I agree with you. There are AI programs that will give you an answer to your question, and they have footnotes and citations that you can check. So they're not just concluding something from, this pool of knowledge that they somehow had access to. They are giving you citations from articles, from whatever else it might be, and you can actually go to those. You go to those to make sure that that's absolutely correct, because they will make up quotes. It will make up quotes, it'll make up citations, it'll make up all sorts of things. It just make them up. I don't know how that happens, because I don't know the depth of what it is that they're programmed to do, but it is crazy.
Just one other, and doesn't it also kind of, when you talk about insurance defense or errors and omissions or directors and all, it comes down to saving money. If AI can do something and it's telling somebody else to do this, you've just done away with a whole bunch of positions that would have used to do that.
That's
By a
right.
program.
Yeah.
And let's face it, our society is based on capitalism and money. How can they be the most productive? And big business is gonna rely upon making the most profit, which means the least number of employees, and they can use artificial intelligence to replace all of that, it's gonna do it.
Well, our profession is uniquely connected to the money issue.
Yeah, it is. That's why so many alcoholics.
Yeah,
Interestingly enough, in the universe you exist in with regards to impaired lawyers, AI, I can foresee, enables them who are impaired to use AI to mask that impairment. And they're not in a position to double check what they're doing.
Yeah.
And run.
no, I think you're absolutely right. And it may have a lot to do with the document production realm of the practice of law too, because there's a lot of that goes on just like that. You don't have to, it's wild. It will do a lot for you, but
I'll
Might
give
not
you
be
a positive aspect of AI. I have an artificial intelligence application on my phone.
Yeah.
Because I'm visually impaired, so
Yeah.
I can't read I struggle to read, I have no central vision. So I can take a picture of the first page of your brochure and it will read it to me.
Yeah.
That's the extent of my use of artificial intelligence.
well, it's not the extent of your use, because you cannot go anywhere. You cannot utilize or access anything on the internet that hasn't been affected by AI. If you Google something now, you're gonna get a different response than you got before. You're gonna get an AI application answering your question for you.
That's
And you
why-
have to
that's why I
understand
don't
that.
Google.
Yeah,
I don't Google.
well, whatever it is that you do,
Right,
to address the internet,
right,
AI is running it.
right.
And there are really no guidelines for it at this juncture, and There's no way to, I mean, if you use social media, AI's running that. The algorithms, they're running all that stuff. The algorithms are running the world.
Drive through your schnitzel now, they got an AI person who takes the order.
Damn it. I'm there, Jim Pearson's, I gotta
Yeah,
go.
it's wild. So anyway, you know what, it's interesting, but these are kind of stressors in our lives, which kind of make it, you know, possible for us to say, God, I need a drink, you know? And so anyway, these are the problems of the legal profession. These are the issues that exist in the legal profession. Now the question becomes what are the solutions? And I'll have to tell you that depends. Depends on how far along you are into what we call your disease. So I'm going to give you this is called pharmacology. Now this is some scientific stuff. So you have chemicals that make you feel good naturally, that you know, operate in you. When you win a case, your pleasure pathway is flooded with dopamine, serotonin, endorphins, neurotransmitters, all rushing up this. You'll take tall, my God, my life. You're gonna, you really want to do a roller coaster, and I mean, all these things happen. Feelings happen as a result of these. Whether a period of time, it starts to affect the natural production of those chemicals that make you feel good naturally. Because these things are being artificially introduced into your system, your brain is very, very intelligent, typically. And it will see that it doesn't need to produce those chemicals naturally anymore. And so it starts to do something called down-regulate. There's a little down-regulation, which it stops producing so much of those chemicals because it doesn't need to, because you're introducing, you know, those chemicals artificially. Over a long period of time, your brain will reduce all the way down to where it's not producing those chemicals at all anymore. If you somehow put yourself in a position to heal, this is called brain healing, it's a new neuroplasticity issue too, which means that you have to rid yourself of all of those chemicals, which is what treatment's about. Then your brain will start to upregulate naturally, but it takes as long as 6 months to do that. So here's the problem. If you're drinking and using alcoholically, addictively, what's going to happen is your brain will downregulate. And when you try and stop cold turkey, like you told your family you were going to do, like you told the judge you were going to do, like you told everybody in your life that you were going to do, you start to feel like you're going to die because you don't have those chemicals that make you feel good naturally. Major depressants.
Now, can I ask you a question
Yeah.
on that? So I have guardrails that my wife and I put into place when I'm in a manic phase.
Yeah.
When I'm in a depressive phase, I'll tell you what happens, but I don't know if there's a biochemical pathway for this, but I used to be a powerlifter.
Yeah.
So when I get depressed, I'm like, oh shit, man. I make sure I go to the gym 3 times a week and I lift as fucking heavy as I can. And the way I lift, that brings me out of the depression. Is there something
You absolutely understand.
Yeah, but I don't know what's going on. What's happening?
I do.
So, yeah, what's the answer?
Well, you are creating a neuroplasticity circumstance wherein your body starts to produce those chemicals in that way.
From a result of going to the gym?
That's right. Exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll keep going.
That's one of the reasons why people go to a gym and they get addicted to the gym. But if you want to call it an addiction, then, you know.
Yeah,
You can
I'm not addicted to that.
You can also eat a lot of sugar, but that's not really very healthy for you.
No, I feel totally different after the gym for an hour. So,
Yeah.
okay.
I just wanted to add to that. That's how I
Uh-huh.
manage my stress levels. I go and do CrossFit every single morning.
Yep.
And I
Really?
lift, and I feel great.
Yeah.
Or I eat a lot of sugar.
It will also keep you from getting tired. In the afternoon, good idea to go work out in the afternoon
That's
so
what I
that
do.
you're not tired.
Yeah.
And that's one reason why you don't want to work out before you go to bed, though, because it'll keep you up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I got to tell you, we're running short of time here, but one of the things that I talk about explicitly when it comes to the competence MCLE on wellness is improving sleep. And there are ways you can do that. Because it seems every lawyer has an issue with sleep, particularly when the stress levels are high, when the anxiety levels have reached that point where the uncertainty is unbearable. They have problems sleeping. And so that produces a situation where you're likely to use something, that you probably shouldn't use in order to get you to that place. There's a big deal with gummies nowadays. Take a gummy before you go to sleep. That can be really, really difficult for some people.
You mean THC?
Cause issues, THC, yeah. It can cause some serious issues, and does.
Yeah.
But they're looking for something. They're looking for something rather than doing the thing I said before, the holistic treatment, that whole thing. There is and I'll just tell you this because you might have this problem. You can go on the internet and you can look up Andrew Huberman's sleep kit. You guys ever heard of Andrew Huberman? Andrew Huberman is a neuroscientist who works for the Stanford Medical School. And he's just a straight talking super scientist. And he has a ton of content. He does things that really help people to move past some of these problems. And sleep is an issue, and he knows it. If you have an effective sleep methodology that uses all the right tools, healthy and safe tools, you're going to be better than you are today. And it's the truth. And he just has a great way of presenting you these 12 little items that will help you if you do them every day.
What's his name?
Huberman. First name, Andrew.
Great.
Like I said, he is just a prolific writer.
Would it be patronizing to ask you to tell this story of you?
Oh, no, do we have time?
Of course, I got to hear it.
Oh,
I think I need to hear that.
all right, good. So, within this story that I'll tell, I'm Exhibit A, that I had all these issues, had all these problems, had all these results that would have been predictable had I known what I know today, and found a solution. And this is what I preach. There is a solution out there for these issues, and it's usually something that happens within us. It's not something that is fixed by a pill. It's fixed by a change in the way I see the world. Not just a temporary way I see the world, but in a new and brand new worldview. It's fixed as a result of me changing the way I think, the way I feel, my belief system, and all of that affects the way I act. And so the recovery process is essentially that, and you'll hear that in the story. But I practiced law for a couple of decades. But before that, I was a pretty doggone good drinker. I went to high school without drinking. I was an elite athlete in high school. But I got the opportunity to go to Claremont McKenna College and took it because I wanted to make some money sometime in life. And I knew it wasn't going to happen if I continued just in the athletic arena. So I went there. Became a fantastic drinker there. It was pervasive on campus. I mean, I remember the first day, each of us met each other down in the lounge of our dorm. You have to live on campus there because they think you'll flunk out if you don't, and they're right. So they gave us a glass, like smaller than this, half the size. It was one of these drinking glasses, little water glass under the desk, and that was one of their gifts to you, just in case you needed some water. But they were going to have a cake party down in the lounge, and everybody was invited. And I heard the, people walk by the dorm yelling, "Cake party down there, come on down, bring your glasses." And I thought, of course, he was talking about this little glass, this little 6-ounce glass or whatever it is. And so I walked down to the lounge about 15 minutes later, and it was noisy and it was crazy. And I walked in there and I looked around the room, and there were people in there that had their drinking capes on, they had their drinking hats on, they had pitchers that they were drinking out of rather than, regular glasses or beer mugs. there were all sorts of devices to infuse the alcohol quickly, you know, I mean, it was crazy. It was a wild situation. And I walk in with this little teeny 6-ounce glass, and I felt like everything stopped. You know, it's like people stopped and stared at me like, the rookie's here, you know, the serious rookie's here. And I looked down at that thing, and I looked at all the things that they had, and I put it down, and I never wanted to be embarrassed like that again, ever, you know, so I decided that if I wasn't going to be embarrassed, I would have to start doing some of the things that they were doing. And of course, by the time I graduated, I had the capes and the hats and the devices and all the other things, and won the beer chugging contest, and, you know, became a part of what it is that they seem to really enjoy so much, and I enjoyed it too. I enjoyed it. It was really important for me to be a part of that, and so I was. And when I went off to law school, I noticed that drinking was a big part of that experience too, because I went to my first day of orientation, and they had a keg of beer and wine over here. This was for the students. And over there was the hard booze, and all the professors were over there. You know, you could go over there and talk to the professors and drink their hard booze if you wanted to. But alcohol was clearly a big part of what everybody was doing. Every time we had an exam, boom, over to the pitcher of beer. You know, before tax class, you had to get smashed. Who's going to go to tax class without being drunk? I mean, really.
Where did you go to law school?
It's that way everywhere. It's that way everywhere. So I became a consistent user of alcohol during law school, and I also picked up cocaine during that period of time too, because it was in the late 70s, early 80s, and it was a big deal. Cocaine was a big deal back then. And of course, it was the antidote to the hangover you were going to have if you drank too much, you know. And so that little bit of cocaine would get you up for whatever you needed to get up for. And pretty soon you realized that, you know, there's this roller coaster thing going on here. And sometimes you felt like you were too high and you needed a drink. Sometimes you felt you were too low and you needed some blow. So it was always trying to maintain this thing, you know, this space, this place. I graduated from law school. Not thinking that this was going to be a problem for me, but it was. It was a problem. Went to take the bar exam. I knew that this was going to be a long period of time for me to not have a drink, you know, maybe even a little drug. And it was. It turned out to be quite a long time. I went my first day of the exam, did some multi-state stuff, and was headed back to my room. And I heard this piano playing in the bar, and I slowed down and stopped and poked my head in, and I recognized some people in that bar that were in the bar exam. Now, I told myself I wasn't going to drink at all during this bar exam. You know, how come, why do I have to do things differently than they were doing? So I thought I could go in and have one. Well, I was at that point where I couldn't just have one. Once I started, I really couldn't stop. So I went in and met the piano player, a very nice woman, and we ended up singing songs together and closing the place down about 2 in the morning. And there I am, drunk, singing songs, and she's got some cocaine, and we ended up staying up all night together, and the next day I felt like garbage. I'm in the bar exam for the second day, and we're doing essays. And I can't believe I did that to myself, you know. And I thought, well, after this day, I'll make sure the third day works out really well. I'll go back and I'll go to sleep. Same thing. I did the same thing again. Now, you would think he's going to learn his lesson. But no, I passed the bar exam. So I learned the wrong lesson, didn't I? I absolutely learned the wrong lesson. I learned that I was bulletproof. I learned that I could do whatever I wanted to do, and the result was not going to hurt me. I kept on that way. I practiced law that way in the district attorney's office as a prosecutor. You know, I was a hypocrite. I was practicing law as a prosecutor, doing the things I was prosecuting people for. And, you know, if you looked up hypocrite in the dictionary, there'd be a picture of me there, you know, it's true. About 4.5 years later, I decided I'm done with that. You know, of course, I made all sorts of excuses as to why I was done with it. You know, a monkey could be a prosecutor for crying out loud. I mean, all you gotta do is know how to ask one question 10 different ways, right? What happened next? What happened next? What happened next? You got professional witnesses on the stand, you know? I mean, why didn't might as well, right? Now, officer, what happened next? And then you switch it up a little bit, right? I mean, all you gotta say is, and after that, what happened? I thought, I need something a little bit more challenging. So I left the district attorney's office and went off to that firm I told you about, you know, that civil firm, and they had rules. That was the most difficult 7 years of my life. It was awful. I could not do the things that I'm so used to doing, you know, and because we were sort of a white shoe firm, you know, you couldn't go to these bars that I used to love going to that had sawdust on the floors, and you spit over here and you take a pool cue and you hit it over your opponent's head and that kind of stuff. And that's where I like to drink. And, you know, if you got caught in there, you get a stern talking to. So, you know, I was living a double life. That began the double life. So I would do the things I wanted to do and not let anybody know I was doing it. I learned that if you know, were drinking too much the previous night and, you know, you still smelled of alcohol, or you had a drink or so at lunch, you know, you could cover that up by eating corn nuts. Anybody ever had corn nuts? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you know, if you opened a bag of corn nuts right now from over there, I could smell them here. That's all I would smell. That's all anybody in this room would smell is corn nuts. And you chew a few of those and you smell like corn nuts nearly for the rest of your life. It was the greatest cover I'd ever seen. Ever, ever, ever. I kept it from my wife, I kept it from my kids, I kept it from my partners, kept it from everybody. Corn nuts. Wow. What a secret, huh?
I gotta get some of those.
Yeah. Well, I finally got sick and tired of having to live that way, and I decided I was gonna open up my own firm, and I did. I opened up my own firm, Criminal Defense. This is out in the Inland Empire. I chose the Fontana arena because a lot of people were getting in trouble out there. And it seemed like I really liked people that got in trouble, you know? And it was kind of like maybe there were some types that I sort of had an unhealthy attraction toward. So I started representing motorcycle clubs. Lots of them out there. And they like to manufacture methamphetamine. And so I became an expert in the defense of methamphetamine manufacturing cases during the greatest methamphetamine surge in, you know, history. And right there in the Inland Empire, you know. And so I worked for people that, you know, paid me in motorcycles and gold and guns and antique musical instruments and cash and all of that, you know. And I rode motorcycles with them, and my social life was, you know, fixated around some of these people. And lo and behold, I sort of like stimulants anyway. You know, you heard me say something about cocaine, right? Well, methamphetamine, boy, oh boy, that was the way to go if you were going to use stimulants. At least that's what I thought then. I mean, it turns around and bites you, and they can do it relatively quickly for sure. But I got too enamored with this lifestyle. I even learned how to manufacture methamphetamine so that I could better represent my clients, you see, because you had to know the process. You know, this is the rationalization, a real rationalization.
It's research.
Yeah, research. So I was living the life that they lived, and I was their lawyer. And, you know, I mean, there are TV shows that are made around those kinds of things nowadays, Breaking Bad, and, you know, Go Call Saul, and Better Call Saul type thing, you know, and that was my life back then.
Wow.
And I didn't see what was happening to them and think that it would happen to me, but they needed me because they were getting arrested. And if I was doing the same thing they were going to do, then I was going to get arrested too. So I started to pick up little cases. My MO was to bail myself out and just put it off as long as I could, act as my own counsel. move on to the next day and next court date. Pretty soon I had 5 cases in 4 different jurisdictions because I was practicing law all over the place, and it was time for me to do something about that. Now, what I would do for my clients oftentimes was to put together just kind of a global, plea deal that would deal with all of the cases in all the different jurisdictions and offer something. And I thought maybe, a year in treatment and recovery would handle it, because I did that for my clients all the time. I figured I could fake it for a year. I could fake it for a year. It would be hard, and then I'd get out and I'd do it easier and better next time, and I wouldn't get caught. And I actually got all the judges on the same page on that, except for one. And the judge that I had trouble with was in Bakersfield. I had been arrested in Bakersfield for possession of methamphetamine and under the influence of methamphetamine while I was in the middle of a murder case. I was trying a guy for 1 count of murder and 1 count of assault with a deadly weapon. And he was also a 3 strikes case. It was a high-profile case because of the person who was murdered. And I knew that it would, create some attention to begin with, but boy, did it create attention. Particularly when I was not released from custody because I had another warrant for my arrest in another jurisdiction. So I had to finish that case while I was in custody. The last 4 days, I finished that case while I was in custody. Every news station that was in that area came to see the lawyer who was in custody with his client. I mean, it was a big deal. It was on every station. If you can remember that far back, you would have remembered that. You would still remember it. It created the biggest issue that courthouse in Bakersfield had ever had. I mean, issue with crowds and problems with them wanting in the courtroom and all of those types of things. But nonetheless, I had to handle that case, and the judge was pretty upset about what had happened and how it had happened in his town and in his county, how I'd been committing a felony, and every single day of my trial while I was there. Can you imagine that? How could I tell him that, this is something I couldn't stop? I really didn't want it, particularly at that time, but it was something that I had to live with at that point in time. I mean, it had taken control of me. And so when it came time to enter into this agreement with, the rest of the judges in these other jurisdictions, he said, absolutely not. You're going to prison. And that day, I was hauled off, hands behind my back, to do a 16-month term in the state prison. I began that term in Wasco. There's a reception center in Wasco. I don't know if anybody here does any criminal law. If you did, you probably know Wasco. Maybe some of your clients would have ended up there, but I ended up there. So here I am in Wasco, and I did 111 days there during reception, which is a long period of time. But they have to figure out who you are to determine where to send you for the rest of your stay in prison. But here's the really interesting thing. I actually had 6 months of recovery before I entered into that prison system. I had been trying to impress the judges. Part of the pressure campaign was that, hey, I'm sober, continue with the recovery and treatment, and I'm willing to do a year. I actually had 6 months of recovery when I was finally taken into custody, and my head was shaved at Wasco. And so here I am with all these people here in Wasco, and I start getting to know a lot of these people, and they had the same problem I did. A lot of them were addicts. A lot of them were alcoholics. And they had some familiarity with 12-step programs. And so what I started doing around my bunk was doing an AA meeting. I mean, I was familiar with AA meetings. I was doing 2 a day. I'd actually found this secret to a life change before I went into prison. And so I knew something about it. I even had a girlfriend on the outside who was in recovery, and when she found out from me in my letters what I was doing, she decided to send to me pieces of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is the basic text that you use in order to find recovery. And the first 164 pages are the relevant part. And she would tear 10 pages out of that book at a time, fold them over, put them in an envelope for me, and send it to me. That's the only way she could get it to me. So I was getting 4 or 5 letters a day. And they were pages out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Pretty soon I had the first 164 pages. She sent me a meeting format. And I could have these meetings around my bunk and attract a lot of people into this setting that needed what it is that we were doing. And I started to feel something for the first time I'd never felt. And that is that I was doing something for somebody else, not just for myself, but I could feel doing it for myself was helping others, and them being helped was helping me. It was really a collaborative situation. And it was a really interesting way to see my term at Wasco. Well, I was shipped off to a place called McFarland for my mainline experience, and that is about 20 miles north of Bakersfield. And there are 3 prisons in that particular town. By the way, Kern County is filled with prisons. They have prisons, they got cows, they got farms, that's all they got. That's all that exists there, really, you know. But there I am in McFarland taking a test so that they could figure out what job I should get. Of course, I score high on the test, and by the way, I didn't tell them I was a lawyer. I didn't tell anybody I was a lawyer in there. Anybody. I did not want my arm broken while doing any administrative work or some work on cases for people in there that could do that. So I did not do that. I took that test, scored very high on it, and I was made the librarian. And I also, because I scored high on the test, was in charge of doing all of the, well, you got a lot of materials there, you know, and so I had to do the inventory for the materials as well. And so I had keys to the entire facility as well as being the librarian. And that took me into the warden's office quite often. And I got to sit down with him and talk to him about why we didn't have any AA meetings in this prison facility. And he said, well, I don't know, we just haven't done that. And I said, would you be willing? If I started one, would you be willing? Yeah, I think that would help people. I said, I know it would help people. And he said, well, we'll get all the accoutrements, you know, we'll get a bunch of books. And I said, and AA meetings, can we do that too? You know, Narcotics Anonymous meetings? And yeah, okay, let's do that. And I said, then one more request. You know, I've really gotten into some of the spiritual material, you know, things like Wayne Dyer, you know, that had new ways of living and seeing the world, you know, some real psychology, you know. Would you be willing to sort of bring some of those books in? He said, yeah. So I started an AA meeting, an NA meeting, and a book group that was all around some of these spiritual books. And, you know, there were only 200 men in that prison. You could tell a palpable difference in the way people were feeling and the way that they were acting. And I got to tell you, I'm in that prison, I'm locked up, I'm in a situation where I can't leave, and I have myself a spiritual awakening. I mean, I'm a different person. I'm giving something away to other people. It's something I'd never really done before. I had guys coming up to me that had never read a book before. They'd been in the prison system for a long period of time. They could only read a few words. And they'd come to me and ask me if I could find a book or get a book for them to be able to read the first book they'd ever read. And I'd find or get for them a book that was relatively simple, and we'd sit down together and work on that. I had guys that were 8 inches taller than me and had been in custody for years and years and years cry as they're reading their first book. I mean, this had an impact on me that I will never, ever forget. So when I finally paroled, I was a totally different person, absolutely a different person. I was, however, still without a driver's license. I'd lost my license to practice law while I was in because they sent me this letter. And it says, will you please sign this, you know, rather than go through all of the complaint and trial and all the things that you have to do, you know, because of the charges that are against you now. And I said, you bet. I signed that thing and sent it off. So I resigned my license to the bar. And I got out, didn't have any licenses at all, didn't have a place to go, didn't have anything going on except I knew where there was an AA meeting. And I went there. I soon secured a job working in a paint store behind the counter. And I was making $5 an hour under the table, walking to work, every day, living in a sober living. And, it was humbling. I look back now and I go, it was really good. It was really good. And I decided that I was going to take another step further. I went to a local recovery and treatment center and I said, you guys, I want to donate some time here. And they said, sure. Yeah, we got a broom and we got a mop and you can clean the bathrooms, you can do this, you can do that. And I said, great, you just tell me what to do. So I was there when they told me to be there. I did what I was supposed to do when I got there. Those were two things that were absolutely, there was no compromise around that. I had to be where I was supposed to be and do what I was supposed to do. Well, it wasn't long before they figured out that I was doing things that their employees wouldn't do. I was there when I was supposed to be. I did what I was supposed to be doing when I was there. And so they looked at me and they said, how would you like a paying job? I said, that'd be pretty cool. That'd be really cool. And so they let me be a part-time counselor, only they said, you know what, you got to go back to school. And you got to get this degree, or, you got to head toward this master's, or you got to get this certificate. I mean, I had lots of different choices, So I made the choice and they said, and we will help you. We'll make sure that you get a partial scholarship through us if you're working for us. And I just nodded my head. I just said yes to that. So I started working as a part-time case manager. Before long, I was a full-time case manager. After a year and a half, I was the director of the program. As the director of the program, I got an opportunity to run the drug court. We had a drug court. This was a place in El Monte, California. I love El Monte. And that drug court was the largest drug court in the state. And, we were top notch. You guys ever heard of Prop 36? It was a new program that came in that was meant to widen the scope of drug court. Well, I got an opportunity to sit down and help to write the curriculum for how we were going to comply with Proposition 36. And so that put me in a place I never thought I'd be. I mean, here I am sitting with legislators, with judges. I'm in chambers with judges and getting to know them on a first-name basis. And it never would have happened if I was practicing law. But here I am in a different capacity, and I'm still on parole. And strangely enough. And we did it. We modeled Los Angeles County Prop 36 program after drug court, and became a really successful program. While I was there, some lawyers called me and said, Greg, we've been watching you, and we would like to offer you a consultantship with the other bar. We want you to start working with lawyers and judges and law students, if you would, doing the same thing that you're doing now. And I said, that sounds good. That's a way for me to give back to the legal profession, because, I kind of hit the newspapers. I made lawyers look like used car salesmen during that period of time, with the things that I was doing. I hope you're not a used car salesman. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. So I made lawyers look bad. And I thought it was time for me to get back to the profession, and I did that. I started working as a consultant for the other bar. But I also went back to school again and got 2 different master's degrees. And so I do a lot of different things today. The second master's degree I got was in theology. So I started to learn some things, not necessarily for any particular religious authority. Started to learn some things about religion and psychology and philosophy that I'd never learned before. It opened up a whole new perspective for me. So, and it really dovetailed well with working with people, developing a spiritual program so that they can move into something new and different for themselves, which is part of the recovery process. And I see spirituality as doing what you're supposed to do, being where you're supposed to be. That's really a very spiritual way of looking at the world, because you're going to change the result. The cause of the result is that what you think. And if you put that into practice and it changes everything about you, then you get different results, and that's what we do. So today I'm the senior minister at Unity of Pasadena. And I have a magnificent life. I get to do what I need to do. I talk to a lot of people about ways to change their lives. I'm sort of a change expert, having been an addiction specialist. And so I do that, and I combine that with working with the other bar. And I do a few other things too. I'm on staff today for Thomson Reuters. I do video programs for them. I do special programming for them. I speak all over the country, and I get a chance to write whenever I want to. And I got great outlets for anything that I write. So you're looking at a guy who was K97949. That's my prison number. You never forget that. K97949. Found a spiritual awakening in a cell. Went along by doing what I was supposed to do and being where I was supposed to be, that I was sitting up in a third story executive office looking over a corporate entity that could change lives as the leader. And I didn't think that was possible, but it is. And it's not just possible for me, it's possible for anybody who steps into the recovery arena. You have to do some things you've never done to become a person you've never been. That's an axiom of recovery, it's an axiom of life. You want to change your life, do something you've never done. You become somebody you've never been. And so that is what I do today, John.
Can you imagine how lucky we are that we
Yes.
have a lawyer who's unbelievable to me. Every time I hear about it, it just brings a tear in my eye. Can you imagine going downstairs and getting locked up every day in trial, bringing back up and finishing up your trial and having publicity for it?
They put you in shackles every time they take you out of the courtroom, man. You got chains on, and you got your waist chain on, and you're in
And I
shackles.
probably love doing it too.
They loved it so much, they would put me in my little cell at lunchtime and hand me a paper bag and say, go ahead and have lunch. And I could not get my hand up to my mouth. I could get the bologna sandwich out of the bag, but I could not get my hand up to my mouth.
Unbelievable.
I had to put it on the side of the table or the bench and give it a bite like that, just to get what I needed.
He's been through the mill.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to see a guy who survived this and has that history. It just blows me away. That's why I'm so proud to bring him to here to talk to you guys. And I probably bother him more than I should every year, but I think this is an unbelievably inspirational story. Because all of us run into problems, nothing like getting busted in the middle of the courtroom, but just horrible problems. And it's amazing that you've come this far and done so much. And I don't want to step on finishing up the program here.
The one thing I want to say is that I've got a story, but I'm not my story. I can use that to help people to recover today. And because people, whether you've gone through that or you're expected to go through that, or you're looking at going through that, I don't know. But it can be analogized to just about any heavy thing that you're going through when you're finding yourself hopeless and helpless. You can't stop doing what you know you should stop doing. So thank you guys for the attention. I appreciate it. You have, remember I told you that story about addiction in the brain and how there's downregulation and all that? That's one of the handouts I gave you. And I also give you a full list of the PowerPoint, a full PowerPoint there, and it has resources on the back page. All kinds of different resources. And my telephone number's all over that. And if you need to call me, call me. If you want to talk about any of this stuff, call me, email me, whatever you need. I'm all over the internet. So you can type my name in and get all kinds of stuff. So it's a pleasure, you guys. We're friends now.
Yes.
Okay, is that all right? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, Greg.
I don't know how you get paid for that. It's just too good. Too good. Irene has food for you outside.
Thanks for the opportunity, John.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here, man. Appreciate it again.
You bet.
All right, so use the restroom, go outside. We're going to start off with an unbelievable ethics panel today. Rod Soda, Wendy Alderson, retired Judge